Rob J gave me an incredibly generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and brings you today's video. Kellan versus the first sliver. And, well, I think we need to ship that back, don't you? We've got both of our colours in that one, and Darksteel Mutation for the commander sounds alright, so yeah, let's just hope that we get into some more mana. I don't think we necessarily need the Conqueror's Flail against our opponent, so we'll ship that back. I'm hoping that the Call the Coppercoats will be useful, because we'll be able to see a bunch of slivers this game, I imagine. Just get down a tap land here. I don't think we're too desperate for Naginata to be in play straight away. Alright, and into our land is not bad, so we can either set up with the Swiftfoot Boots or go for a tutor. Yeah, I think we're okay to just go for the tutor immediately. Or actually, let's go for Swiftfoot Boots. What our opponent plays might dictate what we tutor for. We can always go for turn 3 tutor, turn 2 Kellan played and equipped. It's an Imperial Seal for our opponent, speaking of tutors. So maybe went for a means of dealing with our commander in response to the Swiftfoot Boots. There we see an Arden. So yeah, let's go for the Kellan tutor here. And with that, maybe with an Arden, the Reaver Cleaver would be a good idea. We can start really gaining some mana with that. We didn't have the Arden that we'd just drawn into, then I wouldn't have gone for the Reaver Cleaver, which is why I waited on the tutor. Our commander will not go back into the command zone, it will stay in exile, and Naginata will just get down now. The first sliver that we see is Manawef Sliver for some ramp. Our opponent's still holding up potentially the Swords to Plowshares. Unfortunately not managing to make another land yet. That's annoying. So let's set up with the Reaver Cleaver, I think. And then it might be that we have to take another turn off going for Kellan and equipping the Swiftfoot Boots. Hoping that that gets any spot removal out of their hand, and then we can go Arden and throw everything on there. And it will hopefully be able to make some treasure tokens. May well see the first sliver here, which means we have to go for the Darksteel Mutation onto that, and yeah, they do. So not holding up that spot removal we think they might have. Showing us a two-headed sliver, which gives slivers menace. I'll land here, please. No, Arcane Signet does gain us some mana at least, and we can still go for the Darksteel Mutation onto the commander. Alright, so we're still in line for going for our commander and trying to throw Swiftfoot Boots on there. And then either way, we're likely going for the Arden and suiting something up with everything, because we don't have too much power or toughness in the way at the moment. Although our opponent's getting more and more mana, isn't missing land drops over there. And there's a big sliver incoming by the looks of it. Yep, that's a Brood Sliver. When a sliver deals combat damage to a player, make that many sliver tokens, so they'll get a couple of 1/1s here. Alright, a commander's play is decent as well, so yeah, I think we are just going to have to hold on to the Call the Coppercoats. That's going to be relevant here. And if our Kellan is suited and booted, then hopefully we'll be able to buff up a bunch of tokens and make that relevant. So yeah, go for the Kellan. We're going a bit too slow here for my liking. Swiftfoot Boots successfully landing on the Kellan. They're still going to be able to swing through with everything, even with low toughness, thanks to the Menace. But they do have a surplus amount of mana now, so we are at risk of seeing a Sliver Legion or something like that. A quick sliver from our opponent gives our opponent slivers flash, 4 cards in hand. That could be relevant. We're hoping to get protection from the vast majority of the slivers here. And they are swinging in with everything. No reason not to, really, because they do have the Menace. So Brood Sliver triggering a bunch of times, making more sliver tokens, which does equate to more mana. Alright, so finally getting into a land. If we can make enough treasure with the Arden and the Commander's Plate, then hopefully we'll be able to make Call the Coppercoats relevant and stay in this one. So Commander's Plate first of all. That will give us protection from all colours except white and red, because we're in a Boros deck, of course. And then it's the Arden, which is going to throw equipment around wherever we want. Now we have to be careful clicking that thing, because it can be really janky. So Arden, choose a permanent or player, so we want Kellan. Then we can choose any number of equipment, so we'll go for the Commander's Plate, the Reaver Cleaver, Naginata. Noteworthy, we could move the Darksteel Mutation, but we're obviously not going to do that. And once everything is clicked, it should all equip, and it does. So now we are protection from blue, black and green, hexproof, haste, trample, double strike, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasures. So let's give this a whirl and see where we end up. Noteworthy that we have 3 equipment on our commander now, so that will give a buff to the tokens here as well. We do have a little token sub-theme. But this will be commander damage on our opponent, so 2 hits from this, and our opponent's going to be... Did I not click the Naginata? Oh, it must not work until our commander's power is high enough, so... Yeah, this didn't end up getting equipped. We can do that this turn most likely though. Does mean less treasure tokens. Our opponent lets the damage through. Doesn't have much of a choice. So that is 6 treasures twice, which is excellent. So yeah, the Reaver Cleaver being shooted for has definitely been relevant here. Go for the Naginata onto our commander now. And then don't think there's much need for getting down Eurelia now. We'll surprise our opponent with that. So yeah, let's see what he's got in store for us. We're just hoping that he can't do too much to us with the Call the Coppercoats in our hand. Flashing down a Hollow Head Sliver, which means that he'll get to rummage. Maybe search for something of relevance. So 4 cards in hand, and he's looking for a buff on this token army really. The Menace is going to be relevant unfortunately, otherwise we'd just be able to chump block everything. A Necrotic Sliver is not what we want to see. We'll be able to get rid of the Swiftfoot Boots and the Commander's Plate and then our commander with that. Alright, looks like he's decided to go through to combat first though. So if he taps down a bunch of creatures, he'll have considerably less mana. Maybe leaving the Sliver tokens back means that we've got an opportunity to block a bunch of stuff here. Although he'll be able to react with the Necrotic Sliver and tapping these things down. Yeah, we'll just have to see. All the Coppercoats pointed at our opponent. And now our opponent's got a decision to make. Does he want to let the tokens come into play? Does he want to let us block? Okay, lets them down, so we get 15 5/1s. They can be debuffed if our opponent wants to get rid of equipment. Alright, deciding to tap things down now. So what's he looking to get rid of? The Swiftfoot Boots. So maybe he's looking to see the back of the commander here, so that he can debuff the humans. He can get rid of 2 more permanents. Glad I held off on getting down the Eurelia, because I'm not sure we're going to necessarily care about Eurelia. Although it is a flyer, and I'm not sure how relevant commander damage is going to be now. So Commander's Plate, it can go straight through because we don't have protection from white. So destroying the commander will debuff our... Yes, we will go back into the command zone. It will destroy our commander. Arden's still in play, can re-equip all this stuff unless they decide to blow that up as well. So now we'll go through to blocks. We do not want you to have the Mana Weft Sliver. Noteworthy they could blow something up, a blocker up in response, so we need to dedicate enough to the blocking here. Definitely want rid of the Menace as well. Or do we even need to do this? I mean, if we've got an additional combat phase next turn and we can re-equip a bunch of stuff, can we just go wide regardless, even if we lose our commander again? I mean, they are going to get some more tokens in if we're not careful. So maybe just chump blocking is fine here. Maybe we don't care if we get rid of these creatures or not. In fact, maybe just getting rid of these small creatures and then encouraging them to get rid of one of our blockers so that they can keep said creatures would be good, because then they're tapped out during our turn. So yeah, we'll have at least 6 attackers as it stands now. I'm going to try and do something with Eurelia. So before our opponent loses the Mana Weft Sliver, he may well want to blow up this blocker in order to keep the Mana Dork up. Our opponent will get another untapped token thanks to the 3/3 getting through. And yeah, we have encouraged our opponent to tap down the mana here, which means he's tapped out for his next turn. Alright, just sacrificing the Mana Weft Sliver itself though, so blowing up the Reaver Cleaver, I think the damage is done on that. It is 1 less equipment for us to play with though, which means it's 1 less buff on the humans. Doing it this way means that they can't blow up our commander during our turn though, unless they've got some kind of free spell. So they've got 2 untapped creatures, they'll make 1 more from the Brood Sliver, and I'm hoping that we can go wide on them now. Still got the Arden available to us for these free equips. Arden is really good in equipment decks. And we've still got the 10 tokens available to us. Draw into a land, which can help us with Metalcraft. Get down the Kellan. And yeah, our opponent sees the writing on the wall here. We just get down the Kellan for 5 mana. Arden can re-equip everything to Kellan to give the tokens a buff, and then we get 2 attacks with the Aurelia. So yeah, that turned out to be a pretty decent win in the end. Wasn't too sure how it was going to pan out, obviously, because we weren't doing too well on the mana front, but managed to catch up with that Reaver Cleaver. We'll play another one. Well, I haven't played against Elevere before. Jeska's Will hopefully gets us into some relevant stuff. I mean, this is the beauty of having a tutor in the command zone. Even if you don't have any relevant equipment to start off with, you can soon get into them. Let's play ourselves a Plains into the Sigarda's Aid first of all. Sigarda's Aid, again, one of the better permanents that you can have in an equipment deck. Cheating those costs is absolutely relevant, as we saw in the last game. A Forest for our opponent. Alright, and a Minas Tirith. So do we just go for the Boros Signet here? Yeah, I think we're fine to get down a Plains, maybe be able to get down a tap land with the Bloodstained Maya, but we'll go for the ramp here. So maybe we're to assume that it's going to be an Enchantress build, and maybe they'll have Darksteel Mutation type effects for our commander, so I mean Shroud would help with that, but so would Protection from White. So let's go for the Boros Signet. We will Birthright Boon in order to tutor. Now we have to be careful with the Lightning Greaves in our commander. We want to be able to play our commander and the Sword of Hearth and Home at the same time. So that'll be 6 mana in total, but there's nothing to stop us getting down the Lightning Greaves in the meantime, I suppose. So let's get down an untapped land here after all, so that we can go for the Lightning Greaves. And we did draw into the Captain's Claws, which is relevant in this deck as we saw previously, because we can get buffs on our tokens, but we can cheat the equip costs on both of these. We're just missing a couple of mana at the moment, but if our opponent keeps his hand full, which an Enchantress deck will tend to, then maybe the additional mana from the Jeska's Will be relevant, although we'd like to get some card advantage with that. Our opponent on 4 mana at this point, and is first to get the commander into play, and is going to enchant the Paradise Druid. So that is what the Virtuous token looks like. Alright, that's a land for us, so yeah, we can get that in untapped if we want to. And that will leave us with 2 mana held up, so we could then get down the Captain's Claws and offer up the trade with the commander, which I don't think they'll take. So yeah, get down the untapped land, play the Kellan, and we want to be getting the token from the equipment so that we can move the Lightning Greaves off our commander if we want to. So that's why we're eager to swing in here. Gets equipped for free with the Sigarda's Aid. Alright, so that is now a 3-2 double strike. So the commanders will still trade here, but I think it's still worth, I mean, we at least get rid of their commander, don't we? Well, hopefully we'll land some commander damage and make a token here. Well, Captain's Claw's not one that I often play, but does come down as a 3-1 thanks to the 2 equipment on the Kellan, so it's relevant in this particular deck. Okay, I actually forgot it comes down tapped and attacking, so yeah, that doesn't work with the Lightning Greaves, does it? Just have to hope that we can use the Jeska's Will to get into a creature then. We've at least got our commander into play, but yeah, we want to be getting protection from green and white onto our commander. We've at least got protection with the Shroud for now though, so my error isn't necessarily going to hurt us too much. And the Minas Tirith does come into play untapped now as well, so we might be able to do both of our 3 drops next turn. A Denetha, Capuchin Paragon, 2 mana held up, but their stuff will cost 1 less here. We are encouraging our opponent to swing in at least, because he will be able to draw a card if he enchants his... I don't know if he's gone for a Voltron build here or what, but he just seemed to be tapping down Paradise Druid instead of swinging in. Alright, there is a Song of the Dryads, so that went on to our Kellan, or it would have gone onto our Kellan, it went onto the Lightning Greaves instead. So not only do we gain a mana there, but we're free to go for the Sword of Hearth and Home now, so yeah, the slight mistake I made last turn kind of paid off. The Denetha now a 5-5 with first strike, so we'll have protection from white anyway. 4 cards in our opponent's hand. Alright, so let's see what we can get off of Jeska's Will, I think. Pure Steel Paladin is very nice. Drop down the Minas Tirith. Jeska's Will pointed at our opponent will get us 4 red mana and exile the top 3 cards. Alright, and should always hold off on dropping your... I always do that. Drop the land before going for the Jeska's Will. We should have held off there. Could play the Sun Titan. I don't think it's of any particular relevance, really. We're just looking to land commander damage on our opponents, so let's go for the Pure Steel Paladin first, and then it is Sword of Hearth and Home, which we are going to get 2 triggers on, thanks to the double strike. Pure Steel Paladin draws us, and we equip for free onto the Kellan. Alright, and that gets us into more tokens in Anduril. So, yeah, just so happens that we have the mana available to us to get that down as well. So we're going to be making tokens all over the place here. I'm glad that I get to show this off here because it is relevant in this deck, like I said. Not often that you get to play with tokens in an equipment build. Alright, noteworthy that it would only... That is a bit of a nombo here. Sigarda's Aid, it wouldn't let me target my commander in order to equip this for free. Thanks to the protection from white, luckily we have 0 equip cost here, so I'll move that over to my commander. And we will get a couple of untapped lands here as well, so swing him for 8 double strike commander damage. And our opponent not taking it, that's a shame. We were going to get some spirit tokens in the air. They would have had a +3 buff to their power, as would this thing. It would have had a +3 buff. That would have gone down to the Denetha anyway, because it has first strike. We would have had 2 lands held up, so could have held up the Aganjo as well. So that turned out to be a pretty commanding one, and a pretty fast game, so we'll try getting one more in this video. Well, that's a more powerful one. Korvold, Fae-Cursed King. If we beat this one, I'll be impressed. Well, we've got Darksteel Mutation against it, so yeah, no ramp, but we'll try this. I think we can just start things off with the Infiltration Lens. May be able to get some card draw out of that if we can encourage our opponent to block. Just a tap land from our opponent. It is a Vivid Marsh, so that suggests that it might be a more casual build. Yeah, go for the Tutor, maybe into some ramp here. Don't have a means of cheating our costs this time, so maybe just the Sword of the Animist. Where is it? Sword of the Animist might be the thing. Although there's always an argument for Mask of Memory as well. Yeah, there's no guarantee we're actually going to be able to equip anything here. So maybe we just go for a creature in the Rabbit Battery. Yeah, let's have some fun and go for that. I wish that I'd gone for the sword if we managed to get into a land for our Kellan now. An Ancient Tomb allows our opponent into a Black Market Connections, which is immediately going to get chump blockers for the Rabbit Battery. But there is a Tear. Do we just go for the Tear immediately? We can go Rabbit Battery, followed by the Tear onto the Black Market Connections, and then immediately swing him. If our opponent gets down another creature, we can always just throw the Infiltration Lens on the Rabbit Battery and encourage them to block. That might get us closer to some lands here. A tap land for our opponent, 6 cards in hand, may well just be holding up some removal. There is the land we wanted. So, do we go for our commander then? And hope that the Mithril Coat can keep it relevant? If I could play and equip the Umezawa's Jitte now, then obviously I'd do that, and we can get the counters on that as soon as possible, but yeah, let's go Plateau into our commander. Might as well swing in for some damage first. Might dictate what we do with our turn. Wouldn't have thought our opponent would be flashing anything in. Well, he is going for a flash speed spell, but not relevant to us. It is a Harrow, exiling the Vivid Marsh. And once again, I think we're hoping for a land next turn. If we lose the Kellan during this next turn cycle, we can play and equip this. Otherwise, probably Hammer of Nazan next turn for 4 mana, or the Mithril Coat during our opponent's turn. We've seen the Yavimaya now. Our opponent seems to have his colours decently fixed. A Delighted Halfling. Don't really have to worry about counter magic from us. Alright, and a Feed the Swarm gets rid of a means of enchantment removal. Surprised they're playing that in a green deck, but I suppose it doubles up as being able to get rid of creatures as well. Means it's not going on the Darksteel Mutation. So our commander does go back into the command zone. 3 cards left in our opponent's hand. I think getting rid of that Black Market Connections is going to be relevant here. We do not manage to hit a land. Skull Clamp onto the Rabbit Battery is tempting though. So yeah, we'll tempt our opponent, blocking the Rabbit Battery, because we might not have to Skull Clamp it after all. Just trying to get into some mana at this point. And we save ourselves a couple of mana this way. Deciding not to block is fine. We can kill that thing off either way. So Skull Clamp, equip the Skull Clamp, and that is successfully blown up, so we will draw a couple and reveal a land. So yeah, pretty sketchy game so far, but be interesting to see if we can come back from this. Our opponent's already below 30 and is still able to do things on our turn apparently. That is a Lobela, Sackville Baggins, And it exiles the rabbit battery from us. So they did make a treasure token there, of course, which means they can sacrifice it into the Corvold, which comes down this turn. Floating the Delighted Halfling for mana, and then likely going to sacrifice it. I think they just got rid of a mountain there, I think. So we're going to have to take a turn off, throwing Darksteel Mutation onto the Corvold and hopefully grinding them to a halt. Disciple of Bolas can just sacrifice the Corvold, maybe? Nope, deciding to get rid of the Labila, so they go up to 6 cards in hand. May well be able to deal with the Darksteel Mutation now, but we have to try. And we'll go for the Sword of Hearth and Home now, I think, so that we can just pay the equip cost on that at some point. So with 7 cards in hand, can they get rid of the Darksteel Mutation? They'll likely be able to sacrifice their Corvold. A Crucible of Worlds allows them to consistently play lands out of the bin. But playing fetches will only fix their colours, it won't draw them any cards off the Corvold. It is noteworthy that this doesn't have Defender and it does still have the plus counters on it, so it's still a 3-4 commander. Solemn Simulacrum continuing to ramp, so drawing into something like the Arden again would be good. Just turning everything in sideways, so we take 3 commander damage. Alright, that is a Mana Crypt. So protection from green, is it going to be particularly relevant? Are we best just going for another tutor? Something like a Sword of Feast and Famine or something like that, and then we can get down our commander for 3 next turn and maybe get a Hammer of Nazan on there. Either way, let's get down the Mana Crypt. And we'll go for the Birthright Boon. Yeah, let's just go for the Sword of Feast and Famine, I think. We'll hopefully be able to play that into a Hammer of Nazan. So do we just hold on to all of our equipment here and try and just cheat them all onto our commander with the hammer? Yeah, it doesn't feel good, but I think that's what we have to do here. Could even wait for our opponent to point spot removal at our commander and then go for the Mithril Coat onto it. Not sure if that's really playing it too safe though. Got a big spell incoming from our opponent. That is a Zayatora, the Incinerator. So they've got a means of getting their commander back at this point. Maybe should have just got down the Kellan next turn and tried to catch up to my opponent. It just would have been a sitting duck, unfortunately. But I don't know, if our opponent's got the removal anyway, then I suppose he can always do it in response to any of our equips. Tapping out suggests that he might not have anything. The Sakura Tribe Elder coming into play for more ramp. Sacrificing that. Zayatora does sacrifice the Corvold, putting the Darksteel Mutation into the bin and pointing the damage at us, which knocks us down to 23. See if we take any damage from the Mana Crypt. We do not. Alright, another land I will not say no to, so throw that out, go for the Kellan. Managing to cheat the command attacks on that, thanks to going for the tutor previously. But yeah, like I said, maybe going for it last turn and just praying that it doesn't get removed would have been the play. But let's go for the Hammer of Nazan for the sake of mana efficiency. And that will give it indestructible. It does not have protection from any colours though. Put the Skull Clamp on there as well to give a buff to power. Toughness doesn't particularly matter while it's indestructible. And if our opponent does manage to remove it, then we'll at least draw some cards in the process. But it's pretty much going to be a Voltron win if we manage to get it here, I think. So 5 cards in our opponent's hand, can get down the Corvold and does have a surplus of treasures to draw into cards with as well. Going straight through to combat. Wants to draw to the Solemn Simulacrum. We'll make him sacrifice that to the Corvold. So taking 8 damage knocks us down to 15. Alright, not going for the Corvold. That is Sheoldred the Whispering One. Our opponent's got everything, unfortunately. I don't think we're going to be able to play creatures at instant speed. When does this happen? Yeah, at the beginning of the upkeep, so we don't even have a chance to draw into anything. Sacrificing the Disciple and dealing more damage to us. Forced to sacrifice the Kellan, unfortunately. We will draw cards, but yeah, this isn't looking good for us. Alright, get into Aurelia the War Leader. We just need something like an Arden at this point, really. Lose the flip to the Mana Crypt just to add insult to injury. And then drawing into Elspeth. Alright, well that can wipe the board of big creatures at least. As well as maybe distract our opponent. Still not likely to do anything this game, but this might buy us a turn. Elspeth blowing everything up apart from the Solemn and the Delighted Halfling, which can deal with the Elspeth. Yeah, we either pay 3 mana and cheat in the Sword of Feast and Famine and cheat the equip cost, or we just pay the 2 mana and equip it. So Let's get down the sword here just in case that's going to be of any relevance. Might be that we can't cheat it onto anything thanks to the Hammer of Nazan anyway. But yeah, going up against a Jund player having removal is always going to be a detriment to us. And struggling in the early game with mana didn't exactly help either. It feels as though we're reasonably close to stabilising, I just don't think we're going to be quick enough, and like I said before, as soon as Corvo comes down, it totally refills the hand with the treasures, so see how our opponent attacks here. Yep, finishing off the Elspeth, and 2 damage to us. So gaining some life with the Umezawa's Jitte might be of relevance. And then a Scape Shift, so it looks like it's a Lands Matter variant, so we're likely going to see an army of zombies here. So sacrificing all but 4 of their lands. Okay, surprisingly not seeing Field of the Dead there. There are a couple of Scry lands and a Cabal Coffers. We do not have an Urborg though, which is strange. They've just been able to tutor up an Urborg if they wanted it. There is a Barad-dur as well, so you can amass orcs with that. Okay, so no life from the Mana Crypt would be very helpful. But we do lose the flip, so going down to 5. And a Maul of the Skyclaves. I think we have to try and rely on Aurelia. And you'll notice that we haven't cracked the Prismatic Vista. I've been making use of the green mana from the Avamaya all game, which is looking more and more relevant. We take a life to this, as with all our fetches. So then let's go for Umezawa's Jitte. That is equipped for free thanks to the Hammer of Nazan. And again, we'll just have to try and dodge any removal. Go for the Skull Clamp onto the Aurelia as well. And swinging in the air thanks to the haste, we will get an additional combat after this. We'd obviously like to be doing this with the double striking commander though, not only to threaten commander damage, but to get additional triggers on something like an Umezawa's Jitte. So 2 charge counters on that with the first attack, and then a further 2 charge counters, so that could be 8 additional life that we get from that. We'll do whatever on our opponent's turn, just in case it's relevant. We might want to blow up a creature. We're sort of encouraging them to sacrifice their own Solemn Simulacrum here. They had the Urborg in hand, so that's why they're playing that here. 2 cards left in hand, and access to their commander, of course. Gone down to 14 in no small part, thanks to themselves taking so much life. 12 mana from the Cabal Coffers. And are we going to see a Hail of Torment, or whatever it's called? That is a Ruthless Technomancer instead. So they could just get back the Sheoldred here, I suppose. Sacrificing the Solemn will draw them a card. And makes them even more treasure tokens. Do they want to sacrifice those to reanimate something? Surely they get down the Korvold first. Yep, going for reanimating the Sheoldred, which we cannot get rid of with the Umezawa's Jitte, unfortunately. They are sacrificing all those treasures without their commander in play, at least. Torment of Hailfire was the card I was thinking of before. The one that these decks usually run. Making you discard your hand and take life and sacrifice permanents and the like. Okay, just deciding to amass Orcs X. Yeah, missing haste, unfortunately. I think still just gaining the life is going to be better than destroying anything here, because we're just hoping for a board wipe at this point. So we'll gain the life on the Jitte at the end of the turn. And then we are forced to sacrifice the only creature we've got in play, which will draw us a couple of cards with the Skull Clamp again, so glad I got that back on there. An Onaginata and a land. We win the flip this time, very kindly. Alright, and into a Golem Skin Gauntlets. Yeah, I think the only thing we can really do here, how much is it going to be to tutor? Yeah, 6 mana to tutor. Means it's 9 mana in total to do that and get our commander down, which means we're near enough tapped out. Yeah, we needed something like a board wipe there, or an Arden to throw everything on all at once. It's 7 mana to play our commander, which means we've got 3 mana held up, but we just go down to the Sheoldred. I was hoping that we could tutor for a Greaves or a Swiftfoot Boots, something like that. But yeah, I don't see what we can do here, to be honest. Suppose we can just play the commander and throw a Skull Clamp onto there and hope to stay in it. Not worthy that this does have Swamp Walk and there's an Urborg in play, so we take 6 damage from that at least. And it's noteworthy that this is whenever it deals any combat damage, so if we are able to block with the Kellan, we'll get some more counters on the Jitte at least, which could help us stay in it, especially if we can get both the strikes on from the double strike. It is a 3-1 with double strike now. Doing everything we can. Sheoldred going to reanimate a creature. They've got Solemn Simulacrum. Oh, Korvold's in the bin, that's why they haven't replayed it. Yeah, and they go for the Korvold now. Zayatora is in the bin. But yeah, getting back that Korvold with way fewer treasures now. Anyway, sacrificing the Dork, we'll draw them a card and put a plus counter on it. Might be able to get haste on their commander and get through with Sheoldred and the commander. Now a Vamp tutor, so yeah, they can draw into whatever they tutor for. Don't feel too bad about going down to a Korvold deck particularly, especially with the start that we had. I'm assuming that we're going to go down this turn, we probably should. Oh, and they did all that during the upkeep, so they do draw into what they went for. Playing a land immediately, 2 cards in hand, one of which is the tutored card. 13 mana off the Cabal coffers. Sacrificing a treasure into Korvold, plus counter and a draw. And that is last march of the Ents. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness, and any number of creatures go onto the battlefield. So I'm assuming that that's what they tutored for. Not sure if my opponent's playing with his food here, or if he genuinely just doesn't have a means of haste in his deck. Anyway, got himself a Mahadi and a Beladros, so he can untap his lands. Gonna take him down to 2 life if he does that though. Now a Birthing Pod for more tutor shenanigans. Sacrificing the Ruthless Technomancer to the Birthing Pod will get him a 5-drop, which allows him into some haste in the form of Goldspan Dragon. Then plays himself a Sword of Feast and Famine, so that should probably be enough on its own. Yeah, if our opponent throws it on the Sheoldred, then he'll be able to get straight through, or on the Goldspan Dragon. He'll be able to get straight through and untap his lands. So we'll be taking at least 8 damage from the Sheoldred, and 12 damage on Goldspan Dragon, so we can block this still. I refuse to believe that my opponent didn't have a win here. Not swinging in with the Orc army, but we'll sacrifice Kellan to the Sheoldred either way. We just don't get the additional life from the Umezawa's Jitte. Could always lose to the Mana Crypt though. So Sword of Feast and Famine will have us discard. I think the Maul of the Skyclaves is irrelevant. And that untapped all the lands as well, of course, so seeing some more treasures being cracked into card draw on the Korvold. Noble Hierarch. And a Kellan for a treasure. And I'll point it out again, here's where it's relevant that we never cracked that Prismatic Vista when we didn't have to. A Grim Hireling into play, 7 cards in our opponent's hand and a bunch of mana untapped. Mahadi going to make more treasure tokens, because creatures did die this turn. At the beginning of our upkeep we will have to sacrifice to the Sheoldred. Beladros will make a pest token, and we need to hope that we can dodge the Mana Crypt. So we get to see which cards we were drawing into at least, see if they were of any relevance at all, not really. And Tails never fails, we managed to win the flip, get 1 more card draw, but it's of no relevance whatsoever unfortunately, so yeah, totally lacking on the creatures and really struggling on almost everything we needed. I mean, we would have been able to get back into it if it wasn't for the Sheoldred, I think. The Edict effect doing really well against us. Yeah, we just needed haste really, I think, but yeah, I think it's safe to say good game to my opponent. And we will call it a day there, I think. Got some decent games in with Kellan at least, so if you want to see it again, it didn't do too well during the last video, but it is a really good commander, so it should be more popular than it is, I think. I don't think people are appreciating just how good a commander it is, really. Anyway, I'll keep an eye on the stats as ever, so be sure to support the video if you do want to see more from the commander, and that goes for any of the videos on the channel. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.